How do you increase behavior? You reinforce it. How do you decrease behavior? You punish it. Ultimately, our behavior and learning is influenced and shaped by the consequences. You've just entered the world of operant conditioning. Welcome to the Art of Therapy, Season 3, Episode 8.
You and I, we continue to explore the world of psychotherapy and just how it all develops and how it fits together.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing. So just to recap our last episodes. In the last episode, we really started to explore behavior therapy and how we can look at how behavior is observable and how it's present in the here and now. And then we also just started to look at classical conditioning and really understanding how people can learn through association. And that really changed our view of how phobias and anxiety and trauma is understood and worked with as well.
Yes.
And it just showed that once we can learn something, then of course we have to be able to relearn it or learn it in a different way with a different association.
Yes. It's quite remarkable because with this discovery around conditioning and understanding learning, we've got a profound and powerful principle for learning and how rapidly we learn. And I think we noted that often it's unconscious or out of our awareness. Of course, that's not within the frame of reference working in behavior therapy. But effectively what we just mean there is that this process occurs so rapidly in a way that's not necessarily voluntary. So it's just an incredible learning process, and it shows us how rapidly we can learn, how we can learn and associate in ways that hurt us or painful, but also how readily and quickly, with help or understanding, we can unlearn that and relearn or learn more helpful associations that bring great relief. So it's quite remarkable.
It really is, and it happens so quickly. And it's not always in our awareness, which is not in the frame of behavior therapy, but it just shows how quickly it happens. But all these behaviors remain observable, they remain tangible.
Yes. Yeah. You also, if I just reflect on our, on last episode, you also noted the degree of just once one understands this learning, how quickly it occurs, it comes with much more empathy and understanding. And I just thought that was really important because so often someone who's experiencing anxiety, be it obsessive compulsive disorder or trauma or some specific phobia or anxiety, they just experience a lot of distress and they recognize that irrational part, but they just cannot seem to do anything about it. And those around them often find it difficult to understand. It can become frustrating. Judgment can be communicated without intending it. And then for someone who doesn't have that anxiety, or because it can be so disabling, then very often others will give prescriptions or make suggestions or just do this or just think in this way or just don't be scared or just do it. And no, that often just adds to the frustration, compounds that fear and anxiety. So having understanding and that empathy through understanding the learning process that so quickly brings on or can a phobia, fear, or anxiety. Wow, that's an important part of any therapy process, just understanding that. Or even as one can understand a partner or friend or anyone, the moment you understand how the learning conditioning process works.
It's really empowering, and it creates so much understanding, like you say, for that fear, for that phobia as well.
Yes.
And through that, it's already empowering.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so we kicked off with classical conditioning, but there's been so many other developments in specifically the behavior therapy. So maybe if we can start to have a look at that and unpack that a bit more.
Yes, okay. So what we were looking at is the next development has to do with, if we had understood at this point that we can actually induce fears very systematically. And Watson had really highlighted the mechanism. But the next part of the journey is, well, can we systematically and intentionally remove fear, remove distress? And we can. And that's the remarkable work done by Mary Cover-Jones. She had done some incredible work in the 1920s. And she was really in many ways known as the mother of behaviorism, the mother of behavior therapy, because she was orientated around the treatment and the relief, and showing how effortlessly and gently it can be done. And one of the major studies that she did was a study in 1924. It was called a laboratory study of fear, the case of Peter. And Peter was a little boy, another little boy, who had a terrible fear of rabbits. Now, it wasn't induced. There was nothing like that. He just had this terrible, debilitating fear of rabbits. And so what she did was, utilizing conditioning, decided, okay, what if I pair something like fear with pleasure? And so what she had the little boy do is sit in his high chair, and he was eating sweets, candy, all the things that bring little kids pleasure. And while he was doing this, she would gradually bring the rabbit closer and closer. And if there was any discomfort, just hold or move the rabbit back. And this went on. And what actually happened is that really in no time, this boy who had a terribly debilitating fear not only could have much closer proximity contact, but could touch this white rabbit, could play with it. And this was accomplished in the matter of weeks. It was 2 months. So a debilitating fear completely changed and cured, as it were, in a matter of weeks, which was just 2 months. And then playing with a white rabbit, something that had terrified the little boy before.
It's actually remarkable that that level of distress could be taken away.
Yes, and it was so specifically done. It was because she initially tried praise and things like that, and even play, because we had learned, with various contributions in psychotherapy, the value of talking and, of course, praise, and also the very special part of play. But none of that was resolving the fear. But understanding behavior therapy and classical conditioning and how association learning works, and now pairing fear with pleasure, bring about a complete resolution. So this was incredible, and basically this was our first step into the new development, because she was calling it counter conditioning, counter learning, a different kind of learning, a different kind of association. And that learning could be done in a gentle way. What could be more fun at a child eating sweets?
It's amazing.
And overcoming a most terrible fear. So that showed now just how it can be utilized. That, yes, we'd gone from with Pavlov to understanding that many of our fears are conditioned. Then with Watson, recognizing that they can be induced. But now with Mary Jones, we start seeing now they can be very specifically cured. Wow.
That is just absolutely remarkable.
Yes.
And actually having understanding of that and how it can be, how this such level of distress can be taken away.
Yes.
We had a little boy, we had an extreme fear of the rabbits. We could actually sit and play with them and feel calm and feel relaxed.
It really is something. So now we see this exciting acceleration because having understood one principle, a profound principle of how we learn, the next discovery was with B.F. Skinner. And it was some years later, not too long, 1938. And he wrote something profound. It was the Behavior of Organisms. And what he was now exploring was voluntary behavior. But very specifically, his discovery was that much of our voluntary behavior is actually shaped or reinforced by the consequences of that behavior. And the moment this was discovered, now it meant that voluntary behaviors, voluntary actions, we have a very high degree of control over them if we just understand how they work. And this was operant conditioning, that behaviors are profoundly shaped by consequences.
Psychotherapy is not only a profession, it's a state of being. And for that, it requires continuous learning, training, and refining your skills. If you would like to become better in your role as a psychotherapist, come and join Dr. Warwick Phipps for in-person training at Treatment Work Centre, where you will experience training like never before from a thought leader and expert in psychotherapy. If you would like some more information on our training or to book a training session, please visit the link in the description. And also, if you find these podcast episodes meaningful, please subscribe to The Art of Therapy. It's really now we're moving towards operant conditioning and understanding how our behavior is linked to consequences. And then when we understand that, then of course we can do something about
That's
it.
the point, yes.
Yes.
And one can assist profoundly as a therapist once you understand operant conditioning. But people themselves, each of us, those who we care about, because it's happening and can happen so rapidly. And once we just get it, we can really make changes. So, yeah, it's quite something. And what Skinner had identified was, and it really was through experimentation, a lot of the behavioral approach, really working in experiment, looking at behaviors. And he created a very special box called the Skinner box. And he would have either a rat or a pigeon. And if the rat pressed a lever, there was, for instance, going to be a reward of food. And initially, a rat would move in the maze and just haphazardly, by chance, just touch the lever and something delicious was there. But of course, what would happen is once the rat learnt it, or had that association and was through this process of the consequence, reward, would do it again more quickly and faster and faster and faster until it was strongly learned because of the profound consequence, the reward. So there was a lot more about it, but the key discovery was what Skinner was working with is two very powerful levers when it comes to human beings and animals. And that is that the one lever is we're orientated around pleasure. That's a really important part of learning what motivates us. And the other one is avoidance of pain. So we are seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. And it sounds so basic, so simple, but those are profound drivers of why of how we do things, when, why. So that's profound in itself. But in operant conditioning, we get to see, well, how does learning work around pleasure? how does learning work around pain? And so really his discovery, there was many, but let's just look at a considerable one, was really around reinforcement. Reinforcement being a learning. And really what he said is when a behavior is followed by something positive, something pleasurable, that's going to increase the behavior.
And who wouldn't like that?
Indeed. And when there is something that is painful, is something that is something we don't want, when that consequence follows a behavior, of course, we're going to get less of that behavior.
Yes.
So then, having figured that out, he really identified then, well, when it comes to reinforcing behavior, we've got two ways. We can add something pleasant, which is going to increase the behavior. And anytime we do that, we're going to get an increase in the behavior. So if a child, for instance, does really well and we praise that child, yes, we're going to get an increase in that behavior around whatever it was that they were doing. Yeah, so that would be positive reinforcement.
And it happens on a day-to-day basis. We just don't realize it, that we're actually utilizing behavior therapy.
That's it. It's just happening all the time. Parents implement it with one another. We just invoke it without even sometimes intending. We just somehow know it works, but we often don't know why.
Yes. We don't understand the mechanisms behind it.
Yes. Yeah. So that was positive reinforcement. Then he identified negative reinforcement. So if any behavior is followed by something that is taken away, then that's going to have an impact. So if, for instance, taking headache tablets leads to a reduction in some discomfort, reducing discomfort, then there's going to be more headache-taking behavior.
Yes.
So anytime there's some discomfort or pain that's removed, there's going to be an increase in that behavior.
Of course, we're going to want to have more of that. So you will increase that behavior.
Yeah, very much. Yes. So he had explored then a reinforcement, but then remember the other powerful lever that we have is really around a pain and avoidance of any kind of pain and discomfort. And so what he identified is any behavior that is followed by something bad or painful consequence, then that behavior goes down.
It's decreasing that specific behavior. Then.
That's it. Yeah. So, for instance, he identified we've got positive punishment, and in positive punishment, something negative is added by way of a consequence. And that's going to decrease behavior.
Because we don't want that.
We don't want it.
Yes.
If we tend to like going a bit faster and we get that speeding ticket, that's a positive punishment. It's going to have an impact. It's going to affect us in some way. And very often that speedy driving behavior will be tempered.
Yes, because no one wants a ticket.
No,
so
indeed.
The next time we want to speed, we'll be wary of there might be that consequence.
Yes, and it's powerful.
It is, yes.
Yes. So that's positive reinforcement, positive punishment. And then finally identified something else very powerful around the punishment, which is really the negative punishment. And that involves removing something positive and something enjoyable, and that is removed. And the moment that occurs, as a consequence, the behavior goes down.
It's actually remarkable because the more you talk about it, the more it just comes up that we do this on a day-to-day basis, and society relates in this way.
Yes. Yes, we can. It's just happening. It's just understood or just utilized, but not knowing exactly how it works.
Yes.
For instance, many parents know that a form of punishment is going to be, say, reducing or limiting TV time or any kind of screen time.
Yes.
And so if a behavior is followed by that, effectively as a punishment, yes, that inappropriate behaviors, we're going to notice a sudden decline there.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
just the parent is using negative punishment.
It's amazing to be able to understand this and to understand both the reinforcement, the positive and negative reinforcement, and then the positive and negative punishment.
Yes.
And how the reinforcement can increase behavior and the punishment is there to decrease certain behaviors.
Yes, it's so clear once you see it, but it's understanding this and applying it, because it's just happening all the time, and being very clear in it. And this showed us how we powerfully learn depending on the consequence that's going to shape voluntary behaviors. He also then explored reinforcement schedules. Some say schedules, but that if we just continually reinforce, it's not as powerful a reinforcer as partial reinforcement and intermittent. And he went on and noted a number of types of intermittent or partial reinforcement, but the most powerful one being a variable ratio, where we reinforced, but not on a fixed ratio basis. It's more unpredictable when it occurs. But because it's unpredictable, that has a powerful effect.
Yes.
And we see that, say, with people with a gambling addiction, that the algorithm is set up in such a way that ratio is variable. And someone can be pulling on that machine, that lever, and there's nothing, and then suddenly, unexpectedly, something happens and all that money starts coming out. And the impact and how powerfully it reinforces.
Yes.
And that's why we see those with addiction, say gambling, that is very difficult for many to overcome initially without help, because it's been powerfully reinforced. And that form of reinforcement is often resistant to extinction or anything, because it's been so powerfully reinforced in the first place. So it's this kind of understanding which enables us to understand how someone develops a phobia, how addictions develop, which is quite something. And another contribution he began to show us through the notion of shaping, that we can shape complex and shape the learning of complex behaviors simply by reinforcing very small behaviors and doing so meaningfully, and how profoundly that can develop into learned complex behaviors. So, wow, this sets the basis for profound work in psychotherapy, bring psychotherapy into the here and now, behavior-based, and it being so clear from often an evidence-based perspective, because I'd noted previously, for instance, if one just looks at phobia work or any kind of trauma, one can have a resolution in 80 to 90% of cases in as little sometimes as 6 to 12 sessions. So, wow, what an acceleration in psychotherapy.
It's so pragmatic. It's so evidence based, and it changed the world of trauma, of anxieties, of fears.
Yes.
And once we can understand that, and once we understand that how people learn behavior, then of course we can help to change that learned behavior.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Because once one understands this is where one can now scale it. And we've just seen the most exceptional developments. You had, say, token economies in hospitals ways of giving rewards to patients for really meaningful behaviors. And we know, though, the power of reinforcing meaningful behavior. Now, this was some time ago, but what it meant to people who were entrapped, stuck in various hospital psychiatric institutions, now found meaningful, positive ways of beginning to change. But it was being done at scale, which is really something. Let's look at, we could take ABA, if one just looks at applied behavior analysis. I mean, that work has been just phenomenal in the area of, say, autism spectrum disorder, because utilizing ABA, one can then assist a child who's really hasn't developed language even, very, very systematically begin to reinforce very little small behaviors around language until building up into complex language. And for many of these children, actually learning to speak, which is just remarkable what it does.
Yes.
Learning eye contact, all of these behaviors that are just so essential for interpersonal functioning. Now we have a way to help children who are on the spectrum, who really struggling. All of this is possible really through advancements of behavior therapy.
It's really taking someone step by step, small steps at a time, to actually assist in changing behavior until it becomes more complex and more fully then.
Yes, And it's done so systematically. What I also would like to just note before we just pause with behavior therapy, because there's so much, and there's so many important developments that contribute and are part of us developing and exploring an integrative approach. But I just really want to note the work of Joseph Wolpe. I mean, that work was phenomenal. His work coming from here in South Africa, going in Johannesburg, it just fascinating what he was able to think through and what that meant for us today, because it was really in 1958. His work, Psychotherapy by Reciprocal Inhibition, what he recognized is that we can't be both anxious and be deeply relaxed at the same time. That's not possible for our nervous system, and it's reciprocal inhibition. It's either one or the other. And so what he discovered was any time we have any extreme anxiety, be it a phobia, be it trauma, if someone is trained in relaxation and can enter a deeply meaningful state of relaxation, and we then pair that with some graded exposure to the feared stimulus, because we can't be both anxious and in a state of relaxation at the same time. When we're deeply relaxed, what starts to happen is that graded exposure, and he would use a fear hierarchy on a scale of 1 to 10, from least feared to most feared. And then once one has that, one closes one's eyes and imagines it, but starts in 1 and moves up steadily, but in a deeply relaxed state, up to 10, the most feared. And then later is able to start having contact through real life or in vivo exposure. But this has become a gold standard today. And this was from 1958, the cure, and being the first real evidence-based cure for anxiety, phobia, OCD, PTSD. And so that remains one of the gold standards today. And 80-90% of people can be successfully helped and supported, treated with something. So they may have had a problem for 20 years, an extreme phobia or anxiety, all carrying trauma, but understanding this and working with reciprocal inhibition and exposure. Wow.
It is phenomenal, and we, like I say, it's been so long ago, but we still use it.
Yes.
And we still utilize.
Yes.
And when we understand that, your nervous system can't feel relaxed and anxious at the same time, and then how slowly and systematically to change that, it's remarkable.
Yes, yes. And to think that now, drawing on this, because effectively all your exposure techniques and approaches today all descend from this work. And to think that we can reliably help someone, and someone can, even to a large extent, once they understand this, assist themselves or assist others. It's quite something. So really with behavior therapy, we just see psychotherapy there's an explosion in development, application, short-term therapy, focusing very much on behavior, learning, and anything that's been learned can be unlearned, irrespective of time. There's hope, and it can be changed very, very quickly.
Yes.
If someone is just putting in the time and is willing to face that and to work it through.
It is remarkable.
Yes.
I feel like we can just go on and on because there's so much about behavior therapy.
Yes.
But I also think I think we need to pause here and maybe just look a little bit ahead. And it is the focus was so much on behavior therapy and on the observable part of it and how humans learn. But a little bit of the person got lost as well.
Yes.
And maybe if we move then towards the humanistic theory in our next episode.
I like that.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on The Art of Therapy. If you found this episode meaningful, or if it expanded your knowledge, we would love to hear from you in the comment section. We are looking forward to continuing this journey with you. Until our next episode.